to this edition of When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine, a discussion of sustainable living and what that means to you and me. I'm Jay Warmke.
And I'm Annie Warmke.
Yes, you are. And today we're going to talk about why is the cost of electricity going through the roof when the cost of renewable energy is falling, or fear, greed, and the weather. So that second title comes from, I was talking to a guy in the natural gas industry, and he said 3 things control the price of natural gas: fear, greed, and the weather. So when we get to
say that about almost anything that's being consumed,
probably
in this country.
Doesn't apply to high-heeled shoes. But,
I don't know. The weather, definitely.
All right. So what brought this on? Well, there was a recent report from the
You're
EIA.
asking your own questions.
I'm asking
now.
and I'm answering. I love that when you see these interviews where they go,
You just did
would
it.
I be the person who does that? Well, yes, I would be the person to. Am I hungry? Yes, I am hungry.
All right. Now you're acting like Donald Trump.
Yeah. No. Don't say that. Okay, so there was a recent report by the EIA. That's the let me guess this, Energy Industries Administration. I believe that's right, or Energy Information Administration.
How many of those things can
these
exist,
things they come
man?
up anyway? So they were just sort of giving a state of the industry. You know, how fast different things have grown. We're not getting into that at this particular time, but one of the things that they did mention is that the cost of electricity, and this is from July of last year to July of this year. So July 2021 to July 2022, the cost of residential electricity increased 11.5% in that 1 year. So now the average cost of electricity residential in the U.S. is 15.5 cents.
But you know
per kilowatt hour.
why it went up?
I'm going to tell you.
No, wait.
Let me finish.
Let me tell you why it's going up.
Because it can.
Yes.
There you go.
Because absolutely it can. It drives me crazy.
Right. Okay. Commercial electricity, which is traditionally priced a little lower because you buy a little more, that went up 14.2% to 13.15 cents per kilowatt hour.
Does that make any sense? You use more, you pay less?
Yeah, that's how they do that.
No, but if you use more, you should have to pay more. There's a limited
some places
amount.
Do that, but mostly they say, hey, volume pricing.
But wait, in capitalist society, when there's scarcity and you're using too much, you have to pay more.
No, but if you go and buy the jumbo bag of beans, you get a lower cost per unit of beans.
The jumbo bag of beans now
is
lying, because it'll say
I know
that it is, and it has half of it in there in the same size package.
It's volume discount. And industrial actually increased 25.4% in 1 year. Increased a quarter.
And what is industrial? Like making steel?
Yeah, they use natural gas a lot for that thing, but basically any industry, any manufacturing industry. Overall, the price of electricity rose 15% in the last year. So
it makes no sense other than fear, greed, and the weather.
Well, why, you might ask? Why? Well, before I get into that, I'm going to answer that. But before I get into that, I do have a little bit of information about historical pricing. I'm looking through my cheat sheet here to see. Yeah, in 2000, the average cost of electricity in the U.S. was 8.7 cents per kilowatt hour.
Right, but that's 22 years ago.
Right. 2010, 12.8 cents. 2020, 13.5 cents. And then two years later, 15.5. So the rate of increase is definitely accelerating.
What occurs to me, though, is that as these companies are literally being forced to transition from fossil fuels, that they are passing that cost on to the customer instead of their shareholders.
Okay, you might think that, but that's not the answer.
Okay, so it's just a bold-faced lie, and they're just
I
doing
will
it 'cause
say
they can.
that none of this has anything to do with renewable energy. None of these cost increases.
Or just they made lots of bad investments.
Well, actually, the number one reason for these increases is the fact that still more than 60% of the electricity in the country is generated using natural gas and coal.
Yeah, but that's kind of what I'm saying
No, but
is
the cost of natural gas has increased
yeah.
dramatically. In fact, in let me look this up. I want to get it. I have it in my memory, but my notes are just it's like you wrote these. They're all over the page.
Ah.
So, but it's basically a year and a half ago it was $2 a therm for natural
Yeah.
gas. Today it's $9 a therm.
But you know, like some of those gas pipelines that they were trying to get approved and they were unapproved, some of the costs, you know, over the last decade, where these fracking and shale drilling and all that has not paid off the way that they thought it would. The pricing of these goods that they're extracting have not brought the price they thought they could get, even though the government continued to subsidize. So there's a lot of that filtered into this when you say their own financial loss.
Some of that, I mean, basically what they're arguing, a lot of them are going to say, "Hey, you know what? This whole thing in Russia has caused prices to go
Oh,
up."
that's bull crap.
It is because essentially natural gas is not something you can easily export or import. In fact, the countries we do most of the importing and exporting from are
It's
Canada
Canada.
and Mexico
Yeah.
because we have pipelines that go. We can convert it to liquid natural gas, LNG, and they do that. And that is increasing quite a lot. It's still such a tiny bit of the market, certainly
But that's
less
the
than
stuff you use on a
10%.
grill or one of those bigger
No, they
tanks
use
in
them
it.
in a lot of different activities, but essentially it's a small proportion, and the amount of imports. Yes, the amount of imports is not as much as the amount of exports for around the first time, but
But don't we export oil?
no, this is natural gas we're talking about at the moment. Is it, but if you want to just see, okay, you would say we've now have less supply, so prices have gone up. Well, consumption did increase 4.3%, but production increased 4.2%. So essentially, we have the same amount of natural gas that we had before Russia or anybody else
Right.
got involved. They're just basically throwing that out there because people will accept it, but it's not really the concern. Prices go up. Why? Fear, greed, and the weather. Well, the weather hasn't been, I mean, we've had severe events, but overall, we've been on a pattern of hotter summers, colder winters, but that's not something that just happened in 2022. That's something that we've been experiencing for a long time. So that should not show why suddenly the price quadrupled
Right.
for
So
natural
I'm going to go
gas.
back to this. So it isn't just about fear and greed and weather, it's about the window of opportunity to market your product in a way that makes people have to pay.
Well, a
It's
lot
like
of people are
it's like
expensive.
extortion.
Well, all these companies, and there's been a lot of exposés on this that say people expect it that there's inflation right now. We've heard a lot about supply chain
That's what I'm
constraints.
talking
So
about.
let's just do it and see what
But
happens.
it then drives the price up of everything. But it's
Yeah.
extortion because you have to have the energy in order you could get by without the air conditioning if you had to for most people unless you're in a nursing home or hospital, but you can't get by without heat in some areas of the country.
Right. Well, and also if your business is, let's say you smelt aluminum or whatever, and that's what you
Well,
do.
you got to keep your employees warm in the office
Well, it's
building
not about
too.
warm. That's the thing that makes the product that you sell. So it's just you got to buy it, and you don't have a choice. And that's one of the problems with these monopolistic businesses. Essentially, is you don't have a choice. So as you said, why are the prices going up?
Because
Because
they
they
can.
can. Coal was even worse. We saw in the last 18 months or so, the price of coal went up a factor of 10. So it went from about $30 a ton to over $300 a ton. That is just absolutely
Yeah, and it's
astounding.
crap anyway. But you know what I was thinking? What would happen if, say, a town, a small town like Marietta, uh, would say, we're going to organize a boycott and nobody's going to pay their gas bill.
Well,
Now, wait a minute, because there would be no revenue.
good luck with that.
No, but it would
They'd shut you
really,
off. They just shut you off.
everybody,
Yeah. Why not?
it would hurt them.
Yeah. Well, what California did is they said, listen, no new homes can be
Well, there
constructed
you
with
go.
gas,
There you
with
go.
natural gas. Because, and what this is pointing out is one of the arguments that the renewable industry has had for a long time is look at the volatility of
Yeah,
fossil fuels.
that's right.
Prices go up, prices come down, there's gluts. Now, when the prices come back down, I will almost guarantee you the price of electricity will not go down.
No,
You know, it's like you see with chicken feed and things like
that's
that. All
right.
right,
They
the
say there's
cost,
a problem with the corn and they raise it $5 a 50-pound bag, and then, oh, it's over. And then it's still $5 more.
right? So there have been so we've talked about the gas prices, and gas is significant. And I would say, all right, maybe that justifies some of the increase in electric costs. Doesn't justify all of it, but some of it, and hopefully it should be temporary because when the prices come back down, it should go back down, but it won't.
But
And
their shareholders are making,
they make a lot of
a
money.
lot of
Well,
money.
we'll get more into that because you talk about, CEO pay and things like that, it gets even worse. But let's the coal prices, the weather, we've hit on some of that. So one of the things that I found interesting is um when you're evaluating how cost factors for electricity. There's
Meaning, like if you were building a house or
no, no,
something.
no. Like when somebody is selling electricity, what are the things that went into the costing of that electricity? One of them is generation, right? That's what most people would think of as the only cost. I'm going to run a coal power plant, or I'm going to run a
Well, they
gas
have
power plant, or I've got
marketing,
some.
they have
Yeah. So
equipment.
you've got generation, you've got transportation. Now,
Mhm.
transportation is essentially taking it from the power plant and getting it out there closer to the customer, usually a substation of some sort.
Mhm.
Then you have distribution. So the distribution is taking it from the substation and getting it to the consumer. Those are all the power lines that you see in your cities, all the little transformers that are hanging on poles. All of that stuff is part of the
Well, those
distribution
meter
network.
gas has its own
Yeah,
meter at
they
the
have their
ground.
meters. Well, yeah,
Mhm.
for natural gas. I'm talking electricity now.
Oh, okay.
And then you have administration, right? So there's an administrative aspect to doing all of these things. Well, in let's see, in 2010, the cost for generation was 6.8 cents per kilowatt hour on average. So people were paying 6.8 cents. Now, by the time we get to 2020, the cost for generation has dropped to 4.6 cents.
Well, at the same time, what happened?
Price of the electricity goes up pretty dramatically. It increased maybe 3 or 4 cents a kilowatt hour. Now they're blaming the cost of the fuel. Well, that's in the generation cost. So even if you doubled the cost of the fuel, you're not back up to the same costs that were there 5 or 10 years ago. So yeah, it's a factor, but it cannot be the only factor because generation costs continue to come down.
But what's interesting is during that time period, that same time period, that would have been when they're refusing electricity generating companies were refusing to accept that solar was really a thing. They were saying it was just a flash in the pan, and so
Right.
they were investing in boilers and billion-dollar
Well,
investments into
natural
their
gas.
infrastructure to try to see if they could bring natural gas online, and so at the same time, the cost was going down. That's crazy.
All right. Well, let me interrupt you there in the middle of crazy and say remind everybody you are listening to When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine with Jay and Annie Warmke, reminding you it is indeed the end of the world as we know it.
And thank God, or maybe I hope so, talking about this, it doesn't
Thank God.
sound like it.
Well, you were talking about, okay, what is the price? What's the cost of generating electricity? And as I said before, the generating cost is somewhere in the neighborhood of 4.5 cents, 4.6 cents. That's the average in 2020. Now, that includes old facilities and new facilities. But if you wanted to build a brand new facility, what are the costs associated with that? And for coal power plants, this would be a brand new facility built today with coming online in about 5 years.
Does this include the cost of extraction?
Everything. Well, a lot of those are externalized, but it's 8.26 cents per kilowatt hour.
So
So
twice as
new
much.
coal is, yeah, twice what you're currently charging.
Mm-hmm.
A nuclear power plant, not counting the cost of all the
Boo.
externalized things there, 8.17 cents. So
Still almost twice as
very
much.
expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Natural gas, now this was at the $2 a therm, not at $9 a therm, was 3.99 cents. So actually, and this is one reason why they're retiring a lot of these coal power plants, is running an existing coal power plant costs you more than building a brand new natural gas power
Right,
plant.
like almost 3 times as much.
Well, at the moment, the average cost is 4.6, so a little bit more, but not that much. But if you built a brand new one, which they're not doing because there's no economic
Yeah.
justification, wind is 4.02 cents, so that's the cost per kilowatt hour. Solar is the low cost at 3.38
For
cents.
building a solar
Brand
farm
new
kind of a.
solar array, it's going to cost you not even 3.5 cents a kilowatt hour. So logically, you would think, all right, we're going to shift over
Wait,
as
wait, wait. The
much
word logically, that's the
logically.
problem. You're caught up there.
Yeah. So one of the issues there is that utility companies. Oh, before I get into that, I wanted to back up because you're ranting about
I didn't rant. I
shareholders.
didn't rant. Not
Okay,
yet.
not yet. All right. So one of the issues they never bring up in the trade stuff is why is the cost going? Well, natural gas prices are high. We have to invest in infrastructure, which they're not doing. Now the government's stepping in to
Yeah.
invest in the
Yeah.
infrastructure.
That's sad.
Um, CEO pay for these corporate executives has increased about 500% during this same time period. The average CEO now makes about $25 million a year. And this extends to the chairman of the board of these companies. I'm sure
Uh,
the board members get
yeah.
paid
And then the
millions.
shareholders make a lot of money
They
too.
do, but most of it I think gets sucked up. In fact, we see that in the cost of administration.
But they
Um,
like to argue that we have to answer to our shareholders. They want to
yeah,
see us make money.
we have to maximize profits to our shareholders while I get $150 million in compensation. And they also argue that, listen, it takes a lot of business savvy and smarts to make money in these large corporations, but these are regulated industries that are dictated by law to make money. So,
Yeah.
so you could
It's not a charity.
you could be a mushroom growing on a log, and you would still make a profit running
Yeah.
a utility, which you probably do a better job than a lot of these guys.
Wow. So
So
discouraging.
and we can pay the mushrooms a little bit less. So so anyway, you see with the cost with the administration costs from 2010 to 2020, the cost of administration went from 2.6 to 4.3 cents. Now, one of the things that I was mentioned to you before, and it reminds me of that old George Carlin joke about, a penny for your thoughts, but you got to put your 2 cents in,
Yeah.
and somebody's making a penny somewhere. Well, the margins on these things are increasing. In fact, the difference between what they're charging and what their costs associated have more than doubled over that 10-year period, but they're not showing increased profits, to their
Well, they
shareholders.
can do what they want with the books.
They're
Come
hiding them
on.
in there. They have increased their pay
Yeah.
there for the execs.
But you know what I wonder is with the new smart grid ideas and smart appliances and all that, is it going to equal itself out with all the new customers still consuming the same amount, or will we be able to cut back the amount of electricity? Because it strikes me as we have no control. there's nothing we can do about this.
Oh,
Well,
fear not.
we
Fear
could
not, my
go blow
lass.
up some
No,
utility company sites.
I think what it is the structure as has existed for the last 100 years or so, with regulated utilities operating in this fashion. Um, well, there is no incentive at the moment for them to cut costs, none whatsoever. In fact, there are
Or to cut pay.
disincentives. No, I mean
They're
that's
not
all
gonna cut
good.
anybody's
The
pay.
more they pay the CEO, the more they're allowed to make.
Yeah.
So that's all good, as far as they're concerned. And there's been nothing anyone can do about it because you gotta get the pay your electric bill. In fact, the way that a regulated electric company works is their operational expenses. Generating the electricity, delivering the electricity, and selling it are designed to operate at a break even. So the public utilities commissions of the various states will say, how much does it cost for you to get this to the public? Okay, that's what we'll set the rates at.
So that's the break even rate.
That's the rate. So they
Mhm.
don't make a profit there, although people are fiddling it and they're getting a lot of money and pay and things like that. That's all cooked into that. Where they really make their money is when they build stuff, when they invest in a coal power plant or when they invest in a natural gas power plant. Then they're allowed to pay for that plus add on a profit. So they are incentivized to spend as much money as they can. That's part of the reason why these nuclear power plants were just such a great thing, because you could go in and spend
You
billions of
mean to the
dollars
investor
to
people.
the utilities,
Yeah.
because they're guaranteed, okay, if I'm spending a billion, I can collect from the ratepayers a billion plus a 10%
Mhm.
profit.
Yeah.
And so now we're starting, and the more, if I have overruns, I make more profit.
And then if we blow up the world, well, what the heck?
Well,
I
but
was rich.
yeah, but it's also a crazy way to run a
Well, it
fruit
is.
stand,
It is. It's really not capitalism.
Well,
It's extortion.
and this was all fine when the only place that you could get electricity was from a coal power plant or a nuclear power
Right,
plant.
because they had complete control.
Right, but now we're entering into this world of distributed energy. And the cost for me or for Amazon or for Google or somebody like that or Apple to build their own power plant is actually cheaper than the cost for them to continue to buy power from the electric company.
Well,
So
they're
why
gonna
wouldn't you
kibosh
do it?
that at some point, I
Well, they're
think.
trying, but they can't really because Apple has
Well, they
more
can
power.
outlaw it.
No, but Apple has more power than First Energy, or Apple has more political power than AEP. So these utilities, while big, are not as big as the Silicon Valley giants who want to get into this energy marketplace because there's a lot of money to be made
Plus,
in energy
they're such
marketing.
big consumers themselves.
And of course, right now we have an administration that's very supportive of renewable energy. Even when we don't have an administration that's as supportive, it's still a lot of money flowing out there. I mean, there's going to be a lot of solar companies buying off congressmen. I mean, there's when there's money to be made, there's money to be paid. you know,
Yeah.
and I sound like what, Mr. T or something here. Pity the fool. So
No, you don't
there's a
really.
dated reference, right?
Yes, that's
So
right.
so the barriers to entrance into this marketplace are pretty low. And so we're seeing a lot of
Well, if
these
you have enough
companies.
money, you
Yeah,
can
but
do much of
but
anything.
these other companies are making a lot of money,
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know.
yeah. Well, that's true.
So they're saying, what am I going to do with all this cash? I certainly don't want to lower my prices. I certainly don't want to give it to my employees.
But that's also
So,
what doesn't make sense why Amazon would say, "All right, let's create an industrial size solar generating field, and then let's just throw it out there and let any old crappy people
well,
install."
there's the disconnect between concept and now they're going into their normal practices,
Oh, their
where
business
now their
culture.
culture is let's get a low bid, let's
Yeah, it's
skimp,
stupid.
let's
It's
save,
stupid.
let's do all of these
Hmm.
things instead of saying let's make an investment here that's going to be robust and is going to survive for the next 25 years. They're just going, how can I make this thing pay for itself as quick as possible, because I get my bonuses based on whatever the last
El
quarter's
Cheapo.
in
Yeah.
profit margins seem
Being
to
the
be.
cheapest possible.
Well, one of the things I worry about is when you combine these two factors. The utility companies
Wait,
are
what two?
incentive. I'm getting to it.
Oh,
All right.
okay.
Number one.
Okay,
All right.
number one.
Number one. The utility companies are incentivized
Oh,
to
just
build things.
yes, and spend, spend, spend.
Spend, spend, spend. So
Mhm.
they're going to build gas power plants. They're going to build wind farms. They're going to build solar arrays as quickly and as much as they can. And right now we need a lot, but we will reach a saturation point at
Right.
some point. Now, at
And a
this,
lot of these things don't wear out, so it isn't
right.
like the coal powered and the natural gas. They're gonna go on and on
Yeah,
and
we have a
on
25-year, let's
or
say minimum,
more.
but
Yeah.
minimum.
Mhm.
Now, at the same time, they haven't lowered their prices. So Apple, Google, Blue Rock Station is incentivized to install our own power plants. At the
Which we did
same
do.
time,
Yes.
yes, at the same time that the utilities are overbuilding
Yeah, and that's what
their
I was
power
getting at
plants.
earlier is that what's gonna happen when they realize, "Wait a minute, we're not selling as much
Well,
electricity."
yeah. So then they start complaining. So what are they going to do? I'll tell you what they're going to do first: raise their prices.
That's what
I'm
they're
not
doing.
making as much money as I was making. Let's raise our price.
Yeah,
Okay, that now incentivizes people more
that's
to
right.
install their own. So it becomes the engine of their own doom,
Right.
where they become an irrelevant provider. Well, now we're also in a transition, which is going to extend this period a bit because we're electrifying everything. So when you start having a
Yeah,
lot of electricity, now you move from transportation being primarily petroleum based to being primarily electric.
electric.
Well,
Mhm.
that's as much as we currently use
Right.
in all the
So
buildings
they're
and
gonna
things
be
like that
falsely shored up in a way.
for a while, for the
Mhm.
next couple of decades,
Mhm.
which
But
a
then
couple of
boom.
decades is a long time,
Yeah.
for us especially. It didn't used to be as long, but now anyway, so for the next 20 years, what that will really mean is, man, we're going to be installing solar like crazy,
Right.
and all of the government incentives are in place, um, all of the marketplace incentives
Right.
are in place. The technology is there, where solar is the low cost option, and it's getting cheaper.
Yeah.
Natural gas, fuel, coal, um, petroleum, they're already volatile, they're already expensive, and they will become more volatile and
Mhm.
more expensive. We're just now seeing that they're cutting off oil supplies from the Middle East. Well, that's going to just add to that concern. And speaking of concerns,
You have
we're
concerns?
at the end of our time.
Wow. Okay.
All right, you have been listening to When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine with Jan Annie Warmke. We want to thank I don't know, how can I make fun of Adam Rich
Oh,
today?
just say something nice. He's a great
Our
guy to work
always
with.
sweet to work with
Yes,
Adam
nice,
Rich.
professional.
I'll give him an Emmy. He won an Emmy for
Two,
sweetness.
two.
2 Emmys, okay, for sweetness and delightfulness.
Oh.
And we want to spend just a little bit of time with you. And we did. And as your grandmother hopefully told you, the secret to a happy and sustainable life is
Play nice with others. Clean up your own mess and eat your veggies. You need more, Jay. You're making mistakes
all
here.
right. Till next time.
See the morning glory blossom in the night. Know the stars are dancing in the twilight. Soon we'll be together. All will be revealed. Mother Earth will sing and the children will be healed.
You can find more information on living sustainably in our unsustainable world at bluerockstation.com.